Hey guys, this week we are talking about casino vibes, losing streaks, and a recap of the CV Bracket Challenge, so stick around. This episode is sponsored by TravelZork Travel. Learn more at TravelZorkTravel.com.
Welcome to the Crap Vegas Podcast.
Vegas, here we come.
Vegas!
Here are your hosts, Chris and Josh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 52 of the Crap Vegas Podcast. I am Chris, he's Josh, and Josh, can you still see outside? Is it complete darkness because of the eclipse? What's going on?
So, yeah, we're recording this on Eclipse Day, and I am in the heart of the Midwest in Missouri, where we had, well, we're part of the Missouri I'm in, we had 94% coverage, which, Chris, I understand is not nearly what you had.
Oh, no, we have the 99.6 where I live here, Josh. My kids actually went up the road today to see it at 100% in full totality. They sent me some photos while I was at work today, so lucky them. Yeah, it's very exciting, Josh. That 4-hour process, everybody buys their $8 glasses. It lasts a minute and a half. I mean, this is really something to celebrate.
I figured out I have a little bit of phobia about staring up in the sun. Like, I didn't even want to with the special glasses on. I was paranoid that they were the fake special glasses, and so I would look in like 10th of second bits at the sun.
That's smart. That's smart looking right there, Josh. I can't blame you at all.
Actually, Chris, as I was driving over to get ready to record with you, I was just driving down the road here, and there's a guy sitting out on the side of the road with eclipse glasses on, just staring at it. I mean, the whole time I'm coming up to the corner and then turning, he is just looking at the sun, and I'm thinking, I hope the glasses work.
I'm not an ophthalmologist, but at the same time, I wouldn't think it's a great idea just to stare at the sun, no matter what you're wearing. I mean, that just doesn't feel like a smart play. Well, hopefully that guy's still got vision tonight. Who knows? We'll find out, I guess.
I hope
Maybe
so.
he'll call into the show next week. Let us know.
And if I sound a little different today, it's because, as we said, I am here in a remote location, different than usual. So my audio setup is different. And I forgot to bring my headphones. So we've got a different headphone setup. So hopefully the sound will come out about the same. But if we're not quite as perfect, we can blame that.
That's okay. My dulcet tones will still sound amazing. So as long as they got me carrying the show, Josh, we're good.
We said on the last Patreon show that I had the dulcet tones.
I know. I had to take it over. You can't do it anymore. But let's tell people how to get a hold of us. You can reach us via email. That's podcast@crapvegas.com. You can reach us on Facebook. That's crapvegas.com/Facebook. You can leave us a voicemail, crapvegas.com/voicemail. Or the easiest way is always going to be on Twitter.
X.
He's at Vegas Duffy. I'm at Small Whale 13, or the show page is at Crap Vegas. Okay, previous episode feedback. We received an email from Tiffany. Tiffany said, guys, love the discussion regarding big property chains versus the independent guys. It's something I think about every time I go to Vegas. I think you're right that the type of player really matters, as I didn't pay much attention to it when I went once a year, but now find myself only playing at the properties that are part of a chain. Do you ever see any other properties on the Strip teaming up in the future? Love the show and thanks for all the extra content. My feed is overloaded with your releases and it's much appreciated. Tiffany. And Tiffany, I'll tell you what, you're right. Josh and I found out throughout the month of March, our hosting package wasn't anywhere near enough putting that many episodes out in a month. I literally had to increase it 3 different times throughout the month to get everything released. So that kind of stunk because that increases cost. But at the same time, we had a lot to say last month. March was a busy month.
Yes, the CVPVC is taking up a lot of not just literal bandwidth, but Chris and my bandwidth, your bandwidth. So hopefully you guys are enjoying that extra content because it is a lot of, we have produced a lot of stuff. So hopefully it's not too overwhelming.
Yes, hopefully it wasn't all in vain. I hope somebody's listening. I don't know. Maybe they are. Josh, do you ever see any other properties on the Strip teaming up in the future? I know you've mentioned that you wish that Venetian Palazzo and Fountain Blue would consider teaming up into the same group.
Yeah, and we've talked about, we're not big on kind of the rumor mill on this show. We try not to dive too far into it. So the whole Fountain Blue / Venetian idea came from some rumor that I think we saw on Twitter. I think we're just talking about it as a, would it be interesting? And I think that's how I want to look at this question, Tiffany. Is what do we think would be a good pairing? What do we think would be an interesting, mating of properties? And yeah, I think the Fountain Blue Venetian, Let's see, what are some other independent ones out there, Chris? I mean, I could see Palms being folded into, not really, but because I think the San Manuel tribe is probably pretty independent who can't actually see it blending, but I could see that folding in with someone. I think we've talked about the Boyd properties before as a possibility, as an interesting idea.
I mean, here's what I'm thinking, Josh. The only thing else I could consider is MGM kind of owns the west side of the strip, and Caesars kind of owns the east side of the strip. What if all those independent North Strip properties all came together under the same umbrella? So we're talking about Venetian Palazzo, Fontainebleau, Resorts World, Sahara, the Strat. What about if all those guys kind of teamed up and formed another third party? So the North Strip was those guys.
That would be an interesting idea. And I actually think, I mean, I don't know all the dynamics of the economics of owning a casino and that kind of thing. But to me, that would be a good idea for them. I think they'd get some value out of that. Some of those financial synergies, as accountants say.
That's important. Well, I'm just thinking, Josh, none of those properties, I mean, you know my feelings. I don't like the north end of the strip. It's not a great area in my eyes, and I don't particularly love any of the properties. But maybe for those middle-of-the-run players, the $1,000, $1,500 players twice a year that we've talked about, if you gave them 4 or 5 options that you could play at each one on the north side of the strip, maybe they'd get some more action up there.
Yeah. Bounce from one to the other. Here's a question. As you were talking about the whole MGM Caesars sides of the street, if you could flop a property from the MGM portfolio to the Caesars portfolio or vice versa, what would you do? What's a Caesars property you think that would fit in well with your idea of MGM and vice versa? Any ideas?
I mean, if you're talking room quality and just, Planet Hollywood wouldn't be a bad one to kind of steal. I've always considered that MGM properties have slightly nicer hotels and slightly nicer amenities than Caesars properties. In Planet Hollywood, their rooms, I mean, they're very basic, but at the same time, I think they're nicer than, say, Park MGM's, and those are even new. So I could easily see them grabbing something like that. I don't know on the other options, Josh. I don't think anything on the MGM side would really fit in well with Caesars unless you're talking about maybe something like Excalibur.
I was thinking Luxor, so we were kind of in the same idea, but yeah.
Caesars is like anti-theming. They don't want anything remotely near theming anymore.
That's true.
So, I mean, maybe Luxor, it's just, even where it is now, may be too themed. Excalibur, they could dumb it down a little bit, is what I was kind of thinking.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, just an interesting idea.
Yeah, thanks for the question, though, Tiffany. We appreciate it. Josh, fun fact about this week's episode, I picked 3 listener questions to include, or feedbacks. All 3 females. So thank you to all our female listeners. I don't know if all shows have that kind of turnout, but we appreciate it.
I thought you were going to say all 3 were from Tiffany.
No, it's that would be good too. It's just our dashing good looks, Josh. That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. These are from the non-patrons who can't see us.
Exactly. Yeah. They join and then they stop sending us emails. It's amazing. We got an email from Amber. She said, "Hello, gentlemen. On the last episode, you all discussed a listener question about low ratings and how to get those changed. I understand that your rating is important so that the casino understands how much you normally play. But how is that number used by the casino to generate an offer? Is my average bet the only thing that matters? An example is a player with a $300 average bet 6 times more valuable than a player with a $50 average bet. Should they expect 6 times the amount of comps? Thanks, Amber."
Good questions, Amber. I think it's we can't say for sure. I think some of this is just going to be guessing. Casinos definitely value your average bet, I think, most importantly. They're also looking very heavily at the time you're at the table. So if your average bet is $300, but you're only there for an hour versus someone whose average bet is $50 and they're there for 10 hours, maybe that $50 player is going to be more valuable to the property. So they're really looking at those. They're looking at your average bet and how long you're playing at the table. And Chris and I see it, I think, see if you agree with me, Chris, we see it in our offers that it seems like sometimes casinos value my play a little bit more than Chris's because I'm playing longer at a slightly lower level, but I get more time in at the tables. At least that's how it comes across sometimes in our offers.
Yeah, I think you're right. And no, it's not just average bet that matters. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. Average bet, Josh talked about time, specifically the game that you're playing really matters.
That's absolutely right.
There's a big difference between somebody that says, plays $500, but they play Pai Gow poker versus somebody that plays $150 on a craps game. that Pai Gow poker player isn't expected to lose too terribly much. A lot of pushes in that game. It's a slow game. So you need a much higher average bet to really make it count. So no, it's not just the average bet that matters. They use that information to calculate a theoretical loss. And we've talked about that before. It's just how many hours you're playing times your average bet times whatever the house edge is. So if it's $100 an hour times 5 hours, it's $500 times say a 10% theoretical loss, just for easy numbers, then you would have $50. And then once they have that Theo loss, they'll usually give you back somewhere between 20 and 40% of it as a comp. So they use it to get their numbers so they know how to comp you. But yeah, there's a lot more than just the average bet at the table. It's important, but honestly, I agree with Josh. I think time at the table is really the most important factor. I think they'd rather have a 6-hour $25 player than a 1-hour $100 player, because it just gives them a much better feeling that they're going to get that money out of them.
And Chris, what do you think about the last part of Amber's question? As far as comp ratio, should they expect 6 times the amount of comps? And it wouldn't be as that exact, but how do you think comps go up versus average bet or time?
I think there's maybe a minimum threshold, Josh, where you qualify for rooms in their system, and everybody gets that. But I don't think the free play and the food and stuff, it doesn't exactly correlate evenly with the amount of ramped up play that you give. Specifically because at some point there's only so much you can give when it comes to like food and beverage. Like I know MGM on their offers, they vary from month to month as they send them out. But sometimes at this property you get $400 in food, but at this property you get $1,400 in food.
Right.
And at the same time, can you really eat $1,400 worth of food in say a 2-day trip? So yes, the number went up, but it's kind of meaningless from that perspective.
That's actually what a really good observation, Chris, a really good point. We got a question on our Facebook group from, I think it might have been from James, talking about picking.
We're going to
which
talk about that at the end of the episode, Josh. So don't jump ahead too far.
All I was going to say is, I think about that too. Like I have right now over $1,000 if I go to Luxor and food and beverage, if I stay at Luxor.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to your point, is that $1,000 even close to worth it for me?
I mean, literally, how would you spend it?
Right.
Like, I don't have nearly as much when we go to Wynn, Josh, and we'll talk about that in a minute from my recent trip. But at the same time, I struggle to spend what Wynn gives me in a day, and it's one of my lowest available out of all the properties. And Wynn's food and beverage is very expensive.
So yeah, as you said, we'll circle back to that towards the end. And I didn't mean to jump the gun.
It's okay. We all do that every once in a while, and you're getting older, so it's more likely to happen.
That's right.
Okay.
I need medication.
That's right. Final question of the week, or feedback of the week, from Erin. She said, "Hi, Chris and Josh. Just wanted to send y'all a quick..." Oh, she must be from the Midwest. She said, "Y'all. Just wanted to send y'all a quick note and say that I love the podcast. Found it recently, so only 11 episodes in, but I really enjoy the lightheartedness of the show, and I genuinely feel like I learned something new on each episode. As a female, I felt intimidated to step up to the table at first, but once I got the itch a couple years ago, I haven't looked back. Will either of you be out in Vegas in early June? I'm going out there for the Zach Bryan concert, but we'll definitely spend some time at the tables and would love to play a session with you. I'm also out in Colorado and go to Blackhawk often, so if you're ever out this way, please keep me in mind. Cheers, Erin." So she's not a Midwesterner, but she did use y'all, so good for her.
Absolutely. It's because you're rubbing off.
That's probably what it is. She's heard me enough at this point. She's starting to talk like me.
So Erin, thanks for your comment. I think that we probably hit our peak of between episodes 40 and 47, I would say, and then we've started to decline a little bit. So hopefully you get to that and you like us enough that you stick with us through these down, this low period.
We're kind of in a lull is what it is right now, Josh.
But
I'll tell you what, once we get back to 100, once we hit episode 100, it's just smooth sailing from that point forward.
We can't title this episode The Long Road to 100 also.
Can you have a 40 episode lull? Is that a little too long to be a lull at that point?
But no, seriously, glad you like us. Hope we continue, we continue to get better and you continue to enjoy us. And as Chris said, it's really cool that we seem to have a lot of female listeners, and we like that a lot. And Chris and I are genuinely friends, and I'm glad that our lightheartedness comes across. And we try not to take this stuff too seriously, and we know that most of our listeners, we hope that most of our listeners join us in that it's all meant to be fun, and our discussions are meant to be fun. So I'm glad you appreciate it.
Yes, we are not an authoritative source of any information on any topic. So if that's why you're coming to us, you're out of luck. But we do try to share our stories and have some fun and at least explain what we see on a daily basis at these casinos and properties.
We might be okay on casual dining as an authoritative source.
You probably more than me. I mean, that's your big area, Josh. I don't want to step on your toes there, but that is something that you specialize in. If anybody wants to know anything that's available at Posh Burger and The Secrets or anything like that, or we found out on a recent CVPBC about Josh's desire to go to a Whataburger. Yeah, I mean, he's an expert at that sort of thing. So, go to Josh with any of those questions.
How come you can say CVPVC just like off the top of your head? It takes me like 5 tries.
I don't know. Age again, Josh. That's all it is. If we get older, it all starts to fall apart.
We're coming to the point I might have to agree that that's what it is.
Aaron, talking about Vegas in June, I don't know. We haven't got that far out. We know we're going to be there at the end of April, but Josh and I haven't even talked about June, July. We definitely will be out there in that time frame because that's around Josh's birthday, so we always make a bigger trip then. But I'm not sure dates yet, but we'll announce it as soon as we have it.
For sure. And I think if I had to guess, it'd be more later June than early June. So unfortunately, we might not make an early June trip, but that's just from my own schedule. I know that might be tough.
But we appreciate the message, Aaron, and that will wrap up some listener feedback. Josh, let's keep it moving. So recently, I took my first trip to Wynn in a decent amount of time, Josh, and I thought we would just run across a couple things that were on my mind after the trip was over.
You went without me.
I did. I invited you multiple times. I told you to come.
You did. I know.
I'm not sure what to say.
I haven't even been to Wynn this year. It's kind of here we are, April, and I won't. I mean, we've got our April trip, end of April trip booked, and that's not Wynn. And I would hazard a guess at the end of June might not be Wynn either. So
yeah, I don't know, Josh. That was my first trip in about 5 months or so, and I definitely hadn't been in 2024 yet as well. So it was good to get back and see those people. I think that's really why I wanted to go. It wasn't the Wynn experience. It wasn't some offer. It was just seeing those people that I hadn't seen.
We missed the cruise. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a couple notes I made, Josh, of things that I just felt like were worth pointing out since it had been so long since I'd been there. First of all, there's just so many things that Wynn does well that nobody else even comes close to touching the way they handle. And a couple of just small things that I wrote down, like drivers, beyond friendly, and like they remember you from all your previous trips, and they even remember the conversation you had with them last time, and they jog your memory on it, which is just so cool. And even better, at check-in, as soon as you get out of the car at check-in, they were already saying, hello, welcome, we're so glad to have you. You get to the front desk. Oh, hello again, Mr. Chris. Got your room all ready for you. Let me just get your card from you, and we'll get you all set up. So they know you're coming. They've already called in advance. It's small touches like that really set them apart. And then like dealers and boxes, Josh, so many people went out of their way this past weekend to come up and talk to me that weren't on my table. Josh, there was multiple times that dealers would miss their break just to stand there and talk to me, which is just so cool.
This is awesome.
They're willing to give up their 20 minutes of rest and get off their feet just to come talk for a minute and catch up. And that's really cool. So that is something I don't see at other properties, and just something worth pointing out, that special independent touch that they give you there that you just don't get at other properties.
And you saw our favorite dealer, Rick?
I did. I had a long conversation with Rick. I even went over and played crapless with him, Josh. The fact they would put Rick on a crapless game was pretty interesting to me. That doesn't seem to fit his personality.
I don't know if
well.
I've ever played with Rick on a crapless table.
He was on crapless, and I'll tell you what, Josh. That's what I was just about to say. I didn't see him make a mistake. So good for him. I mean, Rick can even figure out how to pay something, 2 or 3 times. I mean, that's amazing.
So since you mentioned crapless, so you played some crapless. How was that? You voluntarily played crap. We didn't have to drag you into it.
I did. I wanted to see the crew that was over there and play with them. They were terrific like always. And Josh, I don't know what it is, but the last 3 trips, I've been more successful at crapless than I have at traditional craps. I'm starting to doubt my life at this point.
It's a better game.
It can be. Not when I was the only person on the table shooting, so I was on the pass line every time. No, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed playing with those guys. And yeah, like I said, I didn't get myself, completely killed there like I did on some of the other tables.
That's a good thing. Any good stories? Did you have any adventures? I know you hit the all tall small at least once.
Yes, I hit it twice actually, and I rolled it both times. And Josh, I can even have it confirmed because I actually played most of the weekend with listener Brian, and his friend was there with him. we ended up on the same tables multiple times over the weekends. He'd see me and walk over with his buddy, or I'd see him and kind of go to their table. No, it was a lot of fun. Brian kind of plays pretty much the same kind of level we do, maybe a little heavier than us at sometimes. And his buddy was really nice, and we just enjoyed kind of teaming up throughout the weekend. And ironically, Josh, he never plays the feature bets, but before the first time I hit it, he's like, okay, just for you, Chris, I'll throw up. And I think he put 25, 25, 25. And of course, I hit it all. Ooh. So he was pretty excited about that. Yeah. So then in the future, he'd always play when I was rolling, and I paid him off the next day. I hit it again. So, you know, Brian is now a believer in the CV Chris system for rolling them all.
How about slots, Chris? Did you do any slot? We need a little slot talk. Did you play any slots?
I made a note about that, Josh. The only thing I wanted to mention about slots, I had a couple jackpots, but I will say overall, I have always found, and this hasn't changed, that win slots are a lot tighter than the other places that we go. I find it extremely difficult to get big wins at win. And I'm not talking about like $15,000 major jackpots or anything like that. I don't even get like the small $1,500 hits on win slots playing consistently the way that I do. It was a little frustrating from that perspective. And it makes me think in the future, I just won't play as much slots there. I'll just stick to the tables because I did much better overall at the tables than I did at slots.
Yeah, that's been my thinking on win too. And it's just, obviously, these are just small sample sets and that kind of thing. But I seem to do better at slots at the MGM properties. It's probably just dumb luck, but that's how it feels.
Yeah, and it's same thing at Venetian. I've had much better luck at Venetian, much better luck at Aria and the MGM properties. I just haven't done as well at Win. And that's, it's just one or two players. So it's meaningless in the large sample size. Maybe we're just outliers going against the norm here, but that's just been what I've found. The only kind of bigger things, Josh, I wanted to mention that, and one thing I do want to talk about a little bit more, but first, I think I've come to the conclusion after this trip, I'd rather be a tiny fish at Win than a bigger player at Aria. I don't know what it is. Aria gives us so much more than we ever get at Win. I've been to both a bunch recently, but there's just something about Win going back reminded me, it's just, I can't get away from it. Like I did the MGM Platinum thing, and we can quite frankly, both of us can hit Platinum in a weekend. It's not that big of a deal. So maybe I'll still hit it for next year just to have status. But there's nothing that's really drawing me back right now to the MGM properties other than the really good offers they're making. And I think I've come to the conclusion I'd rather take less and have a better experience than lose it over at an MGM property.
Well, and I think that's going to become a little bit of maybe the theme of this particular show. We had that question early on that had some of these same elements. And this story about you, I don't have Chris's same feeling exactly in that I still love to go to Aria and Sky Suites, but I totally get the pull of Win. And so for me, I'm trying to decide if I want to not play as much at Win this year. Not that I don't love it. I really do, but I'm trying to scale back my losses at least a little bit in 2024 from where I was in 2023. And part of playing at Win, at least for me to feel like I want to play at Win at the levels I'm used to, is playing a little higher. It's easier for me to play a little lower at a place like Aria than it is at Win.
Now, Josh, I will say at most of the weekend at Win that I was there, you could actually find a $25 table. Now, not in the evenings. I'm not saying at 6 o'clock on Saturday you could. Now, of course, you could always go over to Encore and get a $25 table. That's pretty consistent.
But who wants to do that?
Exactly. But I was able to find a $25 table most of the time at Win, which was really nice. And, you say that you lose more at Win. I found I actually lose a lot more at Aria recently than I have at Win. For some reason, I'm not saying I had a good session and killed it this weekend. I didn't. I still lost money. But, I don't know. Overall, I feel like I guess I'd rather spend my time there with people I like than Aria, where I do like some of the dealers, but it's just a completely different experience. And you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, at least at our level of play, and you typically take 7 to 8 trips a year?
Right? That's about right. Yeah, I would say that's about right.
And I probably take closer to 10, maybe 11.
I mean, I'm going to be after our April, sorry to interrupt you, after our April trip, I'll be at 4 by April. So I'm on a pace for 12 in the year, but I don't think I'll hit it. But yes, I would say 8 is probably where I'll end up.
But I'd say, okay, overall for us, we probably average around 10 trips is probably what we end up taking a year. I don't know if you can split up your play when you only take 10 trips a year with 3 different properties at our level and really get out of it what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's part of the reason. I mean, as you're talking about Wynn, I'm thinking about all the great things. And sorry, guys, I know we don't want to go on Wynn forever, but we feel like it's home to us. I mean, as Chris said, the crews know us. We know the room service menu, but like the back of our hand. We really like the property. I love the spa, everything about it. So as Chris is talking about it, I'm thinking, well, maybe I do want to go back to Wynn this year and spend some more time there. But as you said, it's hard to split between three different portfolio, property companies.
It is. But Josh, that led me into a bigger thought that I had, and it popped up recently on a CVPBC recording. And we were talking, and I think Adam Bauer is the one that brought this up, is we were making a lot of our choices in the bracket challenge. The discussion was, it seems like vibes, like the vibes of a casino, are what really drive us at the end of the day to make the decisions on which places we like more than others. And I was curious what your thoughts on there. Or do you think that the vibe of the property is the most important thing, even more so than the gaming and the hotel and the food? Or is it just a backup piece that you consider when trying to make your choice?
I think vibe is a pretty good word for what motivates us. It isn't the money. I mean, it is the money if it's a huge difference. I mean, the reason I'm going to Fontainebleau, for example, in our April trip after you leave, is because they're giving me a lot of free play, and I might as well go. So that swung me over staying at another couple of days of Venetian. So there is a point where money moves the needle, but it really is vibe. I mean, neither one of us are that particular about our rooms. Sure, we like to have nice rooms because we've gotten to the level where they're given to us more frequently and that kind of thing. So we value that. But I don't think either of us are unhappy with a standard room, as you said, at Planet Hollywood or at Paris, or we're comfortable with that. So it really is, for us, we're not being driven by the money. We're not being driven by the nicest rooms, although that's a factor. We are being driven by where we're more comfortable playing. It's not one of those things where and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. My buddies will go on to Expedia and look for the cheapest room in whatever class of hotel they want to stay. And that's not what's driving us. It's definitely vibe.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think it's the only thing that matters. And I don't even know if it's the number one thing, because if it was the number one thing, I think 90% of my play would be at Planet Hollywood and Cosmo. Because in my eyes, those two properties have the absolute best vibes in Vegas, just from a pure energy and excitement and just stuff going on. Those properties knock it out of the park from that perspective. But Wynn's vibe it's a different type of vibe. It's not that
very different,
super high energy, loud music, modern pop hits. I mean, you're going to hear Frank Sinatra half the day. It's a classy vibe, and there's something about it. You just feel like you're doing well in life when you're there. Whether you are or not, I don't care what kind of roller you are. When you're in Wynn, you feel like a classy person. It's just, it's a completely different feel. So I think it's one of the things I'll consider when I'm choosing where to play for a weekend, but it is important to me.
Me too.
Josh, after the break, we're going to recap the first round of the CV Bracket Challenge and preview the second round matchup. So we'll be right back. Josh, let's talk about Travel Zork Travel again. Travel Zork Travel is a full-service retail travel agency that specializes in luxury travel services, and they can provide you with VIP services and hotel perks at the same price as if you go through an online travel agency or book directly. You know, Josh, recently I booked a trip using Michael over at Travel Zork. I was going to a dance competition. It's actually I'm going to a dance competition. It's coming up in a week or two. I'm going to be in Nashville with my, I really have been practicing really hard. But my daughter's going to be down there for the weekend. We're taking the whole family. My mom's coming. The kids are coming. We needed a couple rooms. We wanted to stay at a very nice place. And the only way to get adjoining rooms was to go through a travel agent, because they have access to programs that I just don't have access to.
Right.
Michael got it all worked out. He gave me the price differences on the different types of rooms so I can make an educated choice. I also get like a breakfast credit, and I can check in early. I can check out late. I can do all the fun stuff, almost like I'm in Vegas. But the team over at Travel Zork did a terrific job communicating everything, giving me the options. And now I'm all set for the trip, and I have no worries about getting there.
That's fantastic. And right now, Chris, I don't know if you've seen it, but Michael and his family are on a trip in Finland. And Michael has been posting like crazy pictures of his trip, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And if you want to take a trip like Chris's to something Nashville and live it up a little bit, or if you want to take a really exotic trip, Michael and his team at Travel Zork Travel can help you with that. If you want to go to Finland or a photographic safari in Africa, I'm just making this stuff up, but I'm assuming he can take care of that for you.
We're going to guess that he can. So to get started, visit book.travelzork.com and let him know what your dream trip looks like. Travel Zork Travel. Book today and let him know Crap Vegas sent you. It's time to talk about Audible. Everybody knows who Audible is and what they offer. They are the #1 provider of audiobooks in the world with over 200,000 titles, and that number grows each and every day. Josh, what's your recommendation this week?
So, Chris, I don't know if you might be, this might be dating myself a little bit, but I'm not sure. So I'm curious to see where you fall on this. Were you a fan or are you a fan of the movie The Princess Bride?
I've seen it, but I can't say I'm a fan. I've watched it before.
It's not in your wheelhouse.
No, not really.
Okay. Well, I'm going to assume for some of our listeners, it's in their wheelhouse. So my recommendation on Audible this week is it's not an autobiography, but it's I don't know what you call it, a memoir. It's a book called As You Wish, Inconceivable Tales from the Making of the Princess Bride. And it's written by Cary Elwes, who's the actor that played, the lead in The Princess Bride. The neat thing about this on the audiobook is it's this fascinating behind the scenes look at the making of the movie and the story. But the great part is it's narrated by almost everyone in the movie. So as Cary Elwes is telling the story about what was happening behind the scenes, you actually hear from Cary Elwes, you hear from Christopher Guest and Carol Kane, Norman Lear, Rob Reiner, Wallace Shawn, Billy Crystal, Robin Wright. So all the people that were in the movie also participate in the audiobook. So it's a really fun listen. So my recommendation, if you're a fan of The Princess Bride, or even if you're just a fan of kind of behind the scenes movie making, is As You Wish on Audible.
How did this come across your desk as something that you should listen to, Josh?
Well, I love the movie, and I'm a behind the scenes kind of guy. I like to hear stories of what happens behind the scenes. So that's how it came across my radar.
Okay, fair enough. Already have an Audible subscription? Great. Keep listening. Enjoy the service just like me, Josh, and millions of others. But if you haven't tried it, what are you waiting for? Crap Vegas listeners get a free 30-day trial, including a free credit for any audiobook you would like. And you get to keep that no matter what. You can sign up today by visiting audibletrial.com/crapvegas.
That's audibletrial.com/crapvegas.
Okay, welcome back. The CV Bracket Challenge is back in full swing. We've wrapped up the round of 64. We've overcome the seating committee's horrible placements, and we've moved on to some really exciting second round matchups. Josh, I thought it'd be fun just to recap where we are in the competition and just give some overall thoughts at this point after the first round.
Yeah, and I think you'll see as we go through these matchups, Chris, that the seating committee did its job by creating even more exciting matchups.
No, they didn't.
As the CVPVC moves forward.
Okay, fair enough. Josh, I will say at this point, we have dedicated, I don't know when we said we were going to do this at the beginning, I don't think I even factored in the amount of time that was going to be required to really pull this off, time and effort. It has been far, far more difficult than I ever thought it was going to be. Just rounding up guests and getting the time to record these extra episodes on a tight schedule that we already had. And then the post-production time associated with it, because you're doing audio, I'm doing video, and I've now learned that for every 10 minutes of video, it takes me about an hour. So for an hour-long episode, it takes me about 6 hours to get it done. And I'm no professional video editor. That's just to pull it together and make it look somewhat respectable is what I'll say, because I wouldn't say good, but somewhat respectable. But anyways, Josh, let's kick it off. The Linus region. Here's what we got. First matchup on the left side, we're going to have the Venetian against Excalibur. Excalibur defeated Virgin in the first round, and they're going to be playing the winner of Horseshoe versus Mandalay Bay. So out of those two games, anything you find really exciting?
I don't see an upset happening. I kind of think the interesting one is the 4 versus 5, the Mandalay Bay versus Horseshoe. I could see that being an interesting race, and Horseshoe will get some votes from people because of its location, maybe because of its rebranding, and we've got the World Series of Poker there. I think Mandalay Bay is a nicer property, but that's an interesting matchup. I don't see Venetian Excalibur as much of a...
No, I don't see any situation where number 9 seed Excalibur knocks off Venetian in that matchup. Horseshoe Mandalay Bay, I'll be very curious to see how the public and the patrons vote on that one. I do see that could potentially swing either way. Are you giving Horseshoe credit for the Versailles Tower because it's really there, even though it's
no,
not?
I was actually, as I was talking about it, I was gonna, that fits in the Paris side. So I think that doesn't count as,
well, I don't know if
Horseshoe.
it fits in the Paris side,
Well,
but
true,
Paris
yeah.
pretends that it does. So I don't know. That will be an interesting matchup. The other side I think will be better though, Josh. You're going to have the number 11 seed Plaza, who knocked off New York in the first round as an upset. They're going to be going off against Vidara. And I think that's going to be a really exciting matchup because Vidara doesn't have a casino. Plaza's got a lot of good things going on for it. I could see Plaza moving on there.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting too, because we didn't have a lot of downtown properties, at least off the top of my head, that advanced through the first round. So Plaza is one that did. And as you said, it knocked off New York. The other thing I think we found in the first round, both from our voting and our celebrity guests and from Patreon and Twitter, is that people didn't really value hotels without a gaming floor as much. So I think that everyone from who am I thinking of? Four Seasons went down, and
Waldorf Astoria.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All these properties that Josh, I think he overseeded a little bit.
I
Gave him a
didn't
little
seed.
bit too much credit. They had some troubles in the first round, but I think that will be an interesting matchup. And the winner of that Plaza Vidar match, Josh, is going to face off against the winner of Orleans Resorts World. And Orleans had a small upset over Sahara in the first round.
Yeah, and I don't see that one being much of a contest.
I guess we'll find out. Moving over to the Rusty region, we got a big close matchup here. Two Steve Wynn properties. We got the Wynn against Mirage.
Again, I think Wynn's going to move on pretty easily. There will be some love for Mirage, but it's in the middle of this transition. And I think, maybe in a couple years when we do the CV-PVC and we have the big guitar tower, Mirage might be kind of rejuvenated and ready to be higher seated and make a run. But right now, I think that's probably going to be Wynn.
Okay, they're going to face off against the winner, though, Josh, of number 12 Fountain Blue, who did knock off Waldorf Astoria in the first round, going against number 4 Park MGM. That one, I think, could be close because Fountain Blue's got a lot going for it, but Park MGM has a lot of big fans of that property that take it very seriously.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of Fountain Blue love out there, and I'm a little bit part of it. But at the same time, as you said, Park MGM's got some pretty special things. Its location is fantastic. The non-smoking, we don't have to go too far into it. I don't actually know which way I'm going to vote on that one yet.
I'm not 100% sure yet. Next matchup, we're going to have Westgate, a first round upset winner over the Link, going against Planet Hollywood. I don't see any chance for Westgate to win that one, but maybe a bunch of Star Trek fans, like former Star Trek fans, are going to vote, and maybe Garrett will come back for that round or something. And
you've got Elvis fans, and you've got Barry Manilow fans, and I think Westgate
and the
thing
Superbook,
Westgate has. Yeah, exactly. The thing Westgate has going for it is the history and the Superbook, as you said.
Yeah.
I doubt that'll be enough to get past Planet Hollywood, but maybe.
We'll find out. That winner is going to take on either number 7 Treasure Island or number 2 Cosmo. And I love Treasure Island more than anybody. I'm the one that pushed it through. I don't know if it can beat Cosmo, but maybe I can be talked into it.
Yeah, and Cosmo's got some detractors now with the heading towards MGM land and that whole thing. So yeah, I could see it. I doubt I would vote for Treasure Island right now, but you might be able to talk me into it.
Okay, moving over to the Danny region. We're going to have number 1 seed Bellagio going against number 9 seed Casino Royale, who knocked off Ellis Island in the first round, Josh, and that really pissed some people off.
We got some hate mail, which we didn't read, from our Ellis Island
That wasn't
fans.
in my listener feedback section.
I think that Casino Royale did narrowly squeak by Ellis Island, and for some legitimately good reasons and some reasons that Garrett talked us into, but I think this is the end of its Cinderella run.
You know something's wrong when I was the one that was trying to defend Ellis Island.
Yes.
Because that does not sound like something I would do, but I was trying very difficultly to do so. They're going to play thank you. They're going to be playing the winner of number 5 seed MGM Grand versus number 4 seed Paris. Now that could be really close.
Yes, that's going to be a really interesting one. And boy, I'm just thinking about which way I would go. I don't even know yet. MGM Grand has this, no pun intended, but grand history, and Paris is fantastic location and making some improvements lately. You mentioned the Versailles Tower. It's got Mon Ami Gabi. It's got, a lot of good things going for it. That's a tough one.
It is. Also in the Danny region, we got number 6 Flamingo going against number 14 Gold Coast. Gold Coast being the recipient of probably the biggest upset victory of the first round, beating number 3 Circa. And Josh, if you thought we got a lot of hate mail over Ellis Island getting knocked out, number 3 Circa going down, that shocked some people. And I can thankfully say it wasn't just because of you and I. There was other people involved.
No, it wasn't. And yeah, sorry to everybody that loves Circa, and take this for the spirit that it's intended. This is all just good
for fun.
Yes. I can't see Gold Coast getting past Flamingo, but you never know. I mean, there are legitimate reasons that we thought Gold Coast was a decent property and worth moving on and that kind of thing. And Flamingo sometimes showing its age a little bit. That might be interesting. I wouldn't think it's going to upset Flamingo, but it's possible.
Yeah, in the final matchup in the Danny region, you had Red Rock going against number 2 Encore, Josh. Both very beautiful properties, very nice properties, kind of open and flowy.
Yeah.
Just good spaces. I don't see Red Rock knocking off Encore there, but I think it depends on the guest. Maybe I could be talked into it. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, I think it depends on the guest, and same thing with our voters, particularly Twitter. If we have a lot of Twitter, I mean, I would think, particularly on the Twitter side, if we have a lot of people that are really fans of Red Rock and things, they could push that. And Encore, I mean, wins, what is it? Wins flirty younger sister. Win might get the love and Encore, right. Win might get the love and Encore might not.
Moving on to the final region, Josh, in the test region, we're going to have number 1 Caesar's Palace against number 9 Luxor. I'm going to go ahead and call it. Number 9 Luxor is going to knock off Caesar's Palace in the second round.
Are you being serious? Or are you kidding?
I'm only partially being a little silly there. I wouldn't rule it out. I'll say that. Out of all the 1 seeds, Caesar's Palace, I think, is the most prone to being knocked off there.
If I had a guess, I would say you're going to vote for Luxor.
I haven't said anything, Josh.
I'm just saying. So I think it'll depend on the love that, from Twitter and Patreon, and who the guest is that we have, and whether or not they convince me. So if it's Karen again from 360 Vegas, she ain't going Caesar's Palace.
I agree with you there. The winner of that matchup is going to take off against number 12, the Cal, or number 4, the Cromwell. So I don't know. The Cal kind of squeezed through in the first round because they were going against 4 Seasons. And as we talked, these properties without casinos don't have a tendency to do well. So they were the beneficiary of that. But the Cromwell, as much as it's fallen off, and we even talked about that recently on a show, it's still the Cromwell versus the Cal. That would be a tough one for them.
Yeah, I don't see the Cal moving on here. Not in addition to the fact that got pointed out to us that they only do 2 times odds. So
yeah, that doesn't help them at all. Next, we got the number 6 seed Palazzo who's going to be playing the number 3 seed, the Palms.
The Palazzo seems underseeded to me as a 6 there when I'm looking at Palazzo versus Palms, but I would think that we might have an upset here. I could see that happening unless people want to give the love to Venetian and not Palazzo as much, but I could easily see it upsetting Palms. What about you?
I don't know. The Palms, locals love it. They got a great buffet.
Yeah.
They got a lot going on there. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what happens there. But they're going to play the winner of the final matchup between number 10 Golden Gate, which knocked off Harrah's in the first round, going against Aria. Congratulations to Golden Gate making it through there, another downtown property that did well. But at the same time, Golden Gate and Aria, boy, those are kind of polar opposites.
Yeah, I mean, unless people just go crazy for the history of Golden Gate and the downtownness that is Golden Gate, I can't see Aria being stopped here.
No, and especially since Golden Gate got rid of their second craps table. That's not helping them either, because that was the one thing that we could get on your side and be like, well, at least they had a couple craps tables and it's a fun place. Now I don't have any desire to go to Golden Gate anymore because they only have 1 table left. So it's just, that's tough.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I don't go to Golden Gate usually to play craps. So for me, that's not, I'm going there to play cheap blackjack or cheap roulette and have some drinks. So the loss of the craps table, while I think it's unfortunate, never want to see it, that's not actually pushing me away from Golden Gate much. And, every once in a while, if I'm there with you, I do it. But if I'm with my buddies, my other buddies, usually we don't play craps there. So yes, I think it's unfortunate, but that's not much of a needle mover for me.
Okay. Well, that makes sense, Josh. So there's just a quick preview of what we have coming up in the second round. We're going to begin those recordings shortly. Just a reminder, if you're looking for any of the future episodes after the first round, those will all be exclusively on our Patreon site. That's patreon.com/crapvegas. And we look forward to continuing on and seeing who comes out the ultimate winner in this thing. And Josh, I will say, based on the first round, there's been a lot more upsets than I expected. So who
That's
knows
true.
how this thing will end.
Yeah, these have been a lot of fun, and thank you guys for joining all this frivolity with us. I'm glad you enjoy it. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And definitely, we'd love for you to follow us along on Patreon and hear the rest of the CVPVC.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, listener questions, Josh. We got a question that you referenced earlier in the episode from listener James, who said, wife and I will be in Vegas at the end of July. Would you stay in one of the following? You have three choices, Josh. You can either choose Wynn for 3 nights with $350 of food and beverage. You can choose Aria for 3 nights, $250 with food and beverage, but $300 in free play. Or Luxor for 3 nights, $400 of food and beverage, and $300 in free play. So the question really is, do you want Wynn with some food and beverage and nothing else? Do you want Aria with a little less but more free play? Or do you want to go down to the Luxor and get more than any of the other places combined?
Well, I'll tell you, for me, Luxor would be not in the discussion. But I think the first thing, as I kind of touched on earlier, you've got to think for food and beverage, particularly free play. Obviously, you're going to use your free play. But with food and beverage, you should think about whether or not you're going to hit that level or come close to it. Because if you're not going to spend $400 in food and beverage or $1,000 or whatever it is, if you're not going to hit that number, then lower it to whatever it is if you're making this kind of decision. If you think for, what did he say, 3 nights? Or yeah, 3 nights. If you're there for 3 nights, I mean, I'm guessing that he and his wife could hit any of those things. But if it's just Chris or just me, I probably wouldn't, unless I went out for some nice steak dinners or something like that. But if I'm just doing my usual casual dining, I probably wouldn't. So then I would think about, do I care about the free play? Here, $100 difference in food and beverage between Wynn and Aria, but $300 more free play at Aria. I might take Aria because I don't need that much in food and beverage, and $300 free play is great. On the other hand, we know our love for Wynn, and so it's easy that I could pick Wynn in that situation. But trying to discount that love a little bit and just pick what I might like as a better offer. I mean, the room's nicer. If your room at Aria is a standard room and your room at Wynn is a standard room, the standard rooms at Wynn, in my opinion, are much, much, much better than the standard rooms at any other property, let alone Aria. If you're talking suites, that's a different story. But if it's just standard rooms, Wynn might be enough to compensate for no free play.
Yeah, that's kind of the direction I was going with this. I was varying from you a little bit there. We're talking about a difference overall of about $200 in comps, and you're talking about a Wynn basic room versus an Aria basic room. That's a no-brainer for me. For $200, I would much rather stay at Wynn for 3 nights if that's the options.
Right.
That's what I would choose. The only thing that would make this question interesting in my eyes is if the Luxor option was like double the free play and double the food and beverage. If they were going to really...
You're saying James's question wasn't interesting?
No, it's completely boring. But that being said, if he was going to give $700 in food and beverage there and $700 in free play at Luxor, then we might have to have more of a discussion about it and what's important to you. Are you comfortable playing at the gaming levels at Wynn?
That's what I was going to say, right.
Because if you're not, then I wouldn't recommend staying there. Stay where you want to play. I don't like the idea of staying a place and then having to walk somewhere else to gamble. That doesn't make sense to me. So just keep that in mind. But thanks, James, for the question. As boring as it may have been as I phrased it, but I didn't mean it that way, I promise. We got an email from Landry. Josh, he said, sending this question to you and the folks that You Can Bet on That. By the way, I'm noticing that happening a little bit more nowadays. We're getting duplicate questions with them. And I guess they're like pitting us against each other because Mark and Mike, we can't stand those two guys. So they were hoping we give better answers than them. So I don't know. But anyways, Landry's question. Currently on a 9 consecutive session losing streak. These aren't losing streaks where I play for a while and just end up coming up short. No, these are losing streaks where the losing starts from the first roll of the dice. Usually play at an empty table with 1 buy-in, but both my wife and I take turns with the dice. Usually at least one of us will do well, but the past 9 sessions, neither of us can get anything going. What is your longest consecutive losing streak, and how does one exercise the crap demons and start winning again? Cheers, Landry.
Landry, that is a really, really good question. And I'm sure that everyone who's a craps player, everyone who's a gambler falls into these situations. I think about, I haven't honestly counted my consecutive losing sessions. I think I'd probably go insane if I did that. But there are definitely times where I think, am I doing this wrong? Am I playing craps wrong? just whatever the right way is. Am I just doing it wrong? And then, like, is it impossible to win with the way I'm playing? Can you not win playing, to use an example, can you not win playing 135 across? Is it actually not possible to win a session? Whatever your level is, I know we've all been there, that you think to yourself, this game, I just can't win. And then it will turn. And it might not turn for a long time. It might not turn for more than one session, but you will have a session where you win, and you take a breath, you take a step back and think, okay, it is possible to win at this game. And maybe you need to make some more conservative bets and not be as, crazy with whatever you're betting. Stop betting the all small if you do that, or that kind of thing. Just go back to kind of basics of whatever the best bets are at the game that you're playing. But it's just luck and it's variance, and it will eventually turn. The trick is preserve your bankroll as much as you can, and don't go too crazy trying to press to make it up, or to what's the expression, Chris, when you're going
double up to catch up?
That's the one I was looking for.
Okay,
right. Thank
perfect.
you. I was hunting for that. It wasn't in my head. Yeah, but it's changing the momentum, or changing the luck of the table. I mean, Garrett on the Danny region of the Property Bracket Challenge one time was talking about he usually throws a high lob, and all of a sudden he started throwing these line drive throws of the dice. Whatever you want to do, if you want to try left hand versus right hand, or do a spin before you throw it, or whatever, we all do those things. And hey, whatever works, once it changes, believe in it, go with that for as long as it lasts, but it will change.
Yeah, you're right. You know what's most frustrating about the game of craps, Josh, compared to some other games, is that on a craps game, you can always be a winner.
Yes.
There is a way to play
There's
at
a winning
all times
side. Yeah, that's a
that
good
makes
point.
you a winner. And there's not many games like that. But I mean, you have to pick the correct way to play at that time. If you're on the pass line, maybe you have to choose the right numbers that come up, because you bet the 6 and 8 and all of a sudden it's 4, 5, 9, 10 out. You could have been a winner. You just had the wrong numbers. Or, if you're playing the don't, that might have made you a winner. There's a way to win. So it's frustrating, because all we're doing is making the wrong choice at that time when we're making our bets. And I can tell you, Landry, the amount of times where I've been going through a bad streak, and then I end up playing at a table with somebody else that's playing a completely different way, and I start second guessing what I do. I was like, well, maybe I should be doing this. I played with somebody over the weekend when I was at Wynn, that they were playing effectively the same dollar amount as me the whole time, but they were just putting their bets on 2 place bets. They would make like 2 $300 place bets on 2 numbers, and they would switch it up every single roll. Like one time they'd play the 6-8, one time they'd play the 4-10. They had a system that they used, Josh, but they were only taking 2 bets at a time. And there were certain rolls where they absolutely killed it, because they were starting off much higher. They were pressing more aggressively, and I wasn't making nearly as much as them. And there were plenty of other rolls where the rolls were coming against the numbers that they bet. I was making a killing and they weren't. So I wouldn't second guess or think I need to change the way I play or anything. If that's what you enjoy, that's what you enjoy. You just got to have the bankroll to stick around to see when it turns. And that's what casinos love, is that eventually it will come around, but you might not be there when it happens.
One of the kind of the opposite of your question, Landry, and don't mean to bring up a painful subject, but one of the best times I ever had, I know exactly when it was. I was staying at Bellagio, and this was before I was playing at the levels that I play now with Chris. I was, I think, a 135 across player, and I was there for a weekend, let's say Friday to Tuesday, something like that. Every single session I played was a winning session. Not a big winning session, but it was, I'd win $1,000. I'd win $200. I'd win $400. Over the course of the weekend, I won $10,000. And it was because every single session I won playing 135 across. So, I mean, I'm not to say that that's possible or that's going to happen, but just to say that it will turn in some way. And when it does, when you can have one of those, even though no session was huge, every little one I won, every little session was a winner, and it came out to a fantastic trip when you put it all together. And I remember that as being like, wow, what a fun experience that was.
Sure. Yeah, that doesn't happen too terribly often.
No.
But when it does...
There's a reason I remember it.
I mean, Josh, you know how it is. We get in some of these funks sometimes where we feel like we can't do anything right. And it's like, why am I even walking up to the table? And really should just take a break at that point. no, the break doesn't change anything. It's not like the dice know you walked away from the table, but just mentally, maybe we need to hit the restart button on our body and try this again fresh a different time. But I will say, Josh, there's sometimes when you're on a hot table and things are going well, especially if you're the shooter, and your mind, you just feel like I can't mess up. I couldn't throw a 7 if I tried. And when that happens, gosh, that feeling is always amazing. It's what makes the game so much fun. I think it's unlike any other game. I've never felt that way at a blackjack table before if I was on a hot streak. There's something about craps when you're like 25 to 30 rolls in and your bets are getting pressed up and everybody's so happy for you and cheering like crazy. That's just an unmatched feeling.
And the one piece of advice I have kind of as we wrap up your question, Landry, is maybe if you're feeling like this, take a step away from craps for one trip or so to rebuild that bankroll so that my thinking is it's not so much rebuilding it as much as giving yourself a mental break so that when you jump in the next session, a loss doesn't feel as big. Because we're going to have those. I think Chris and I start out almost every morning when we start our first session as a losing session. At least it feels like that. But you want to get kind of out of that mental mindset where that initial loss doesn't matter as much to you. And so take a break until you get just in a better place so that you can just mentally handle those better.
Yeah, Josh and I always joke that the first marker of the day doesn't count. We say that every single trip because we always lose the first marker. And then we always say, well, let's take a smaller marker for the first one so it doesn't hurt as much, and we never do. Of course, no, there's nothing, statistically different about the first session of your trip versus the last session. But yeah, it just always feels that way. But it's all a mental thing. I know how hard it is. We've all gone through it. I don't keep track of how many losing sessions in a row I've had. I'm sure I've been 15, 20 sessions and not had a winner. And it feels like it's never going to end. And financially, that can be pretty ruinous depending on what your gambling budget looks like. But eventually it will come back around. You just got to be there for it. But thanks for the question. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Landry.
We also got an email from Daniel. 2 quick ones, Josh. He said, if you could never play craps again and only substitute one gambling game, what would it be?
First thing that popped into my head right now, because I'm trying to move towards it a little bit, is video poker. But I don't actually know that could sustain my interest if not for craps. If I could never play craps again, I bet you I'd be a roulette player.
A roulette player. Interesting.
for the excitement of it. Blackjack would be too boring for me to play. It would have to be something more exciting. I think I'd try and play 000 roulette, although I don't know, that might be just a tough one.
Just to clarify there, you're not just going to play roulette. You want to play the worst variant that exists. You want to make sure it's 000.
Oh, did I say I meant single zero?
Okay, I just double checking. Some listeners would probably be wondering what's going on there. But Josh, there's so many more ways to win on a 000 roulette table.
That's true. More zeros, more ways to win, right?
Exactly. Yeah. By the way, video poker, if that was the option for me, I'd rather jab myself in the eye with an ice pick. That sounds horrible.
That's
it would
why
be blackjack for me. I'd go back to my blackjack days. The nice thing about blackjack is typically your money lasts a lot longer. You don't have as big of swings as you do with craps typically, but it's a game you can play for a long period of time typically, and it can be enjoyable.
I think I'd have to learn baccarat.
God, that sounds horrible too. Banker. Yay. I didn't do anything. Show me the cards. It's like playing Casino War is what baccarat is. I don't get it.
I think we're just going to have to hope that craps doesn't go away.
Exactly. I think that's true. His second question is last one of the day, Josh. Favorite poker hand besides pocket aces?
I'm going to have to go big slick. Ace king suited. I like ace. You can do a lot with that. It can get you in big trouble, but you can do a lot with it.
I'm a shitty poker player. I used to play a decent amount when I was younger, and I never was very good at it.
Did you even know what big slick was?
Yeah, I did, Josh. I hated pocket pairs. Any pair, I hated them because I always felt like I had to chase it, and I'd see the flop, and I'd never trip up. And so it's like, oh my God, what do I do here? You know what hand I play more than I think anybody, and there's no reason in the world to play this hand. I love playing Queen 7 suited. I have no idea why.
Queen 7 suited?
Queen 7 suited. I feel like I get that hand like every 5 hands, I feel like I get Queen 7 suited. And I love that hand. I don't know why. It's not a good hand. But yeah, pretty much if you're playing at a poker table with me and I seem really excited pre-flop, I probably have queen 7 suited.
So I don't remember if we told this story on the very first episode of the show, Chris, but I kind of cut my gambling teeth playing at a little a little supper club that had blackjack near where I went to college. And so I'd go down there and play some blackjack, but mostly I wanted to play poker. And we played Texas Hold'em, we played High-Low Omaha with these old farmers that were in this town. And I would always get my ass kicked by these old farmers. But they said, if in your queen 7 suited made me think of this, they said if I was ever on a flush draw, no one could get me off that flush draw. I would chase that flush until the end of time.
You are sticking around. You got to see the river on that one. Good for you, Josh.
And of course, if it hit, I'd win, but...
Oh, yeah. I mean, if the flush got made, they all knew they're in big trouble if you're in the hand.
I was such a bad poker player back then.
Oh, I was too, man. There's a reason I don't play anymore. But thank you guys for all the questions this week. We appreciate it. Okay, Patreon. That's patreon.com/crapvegas. Josh, what's new over there this week?
I actually think our last Patreon show, we talked about a topic that was one of the most interesting ones that I think we've covered in a while, which is, do you play at the same level at various games in a casino? So, for example, let's say you play 135 across on a craps table. So we had a discussion, Chris and I did, about where we play at different games. What do I start out in blackjack? What does Chris tend to start out at? And why does that differ from craps, if it does, for example, or slot machines? I thought it was a really interesting psychological discussion. And I hope that if you all have some thoughts too, why do you play, if you play differently from game to game? And when I say play differently, your betting amounts are different. Why is it? Is it the game? Is it not knowing the best strategies? Is it intimidation? Why would you do it? Anyway, that's what we talked about on the last Patreon episode. So if you want to hear what we had to say, that's where to find it.
Big thank you to the new patrons this week. We got Matt T, Sadie H, Tony G, Heather F, Jamie V, and Wisco 330 Inside. So thank you to all of you guys signing up in the past couple of weeks. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. It means a lot to us. Your support does. We try and make it interesting, and we always put some thought into what we want to do for our patrons to keep you guys feeling engaged with us over there.
And we need a bunch of you also to sign up if you haven't yet, because if it goes over 24 hours without a new patron, Josh starts to get really paranoid and thinks something's wrong. He starts messaging me, what did we do wrong this week? And what is going on? He gets really upset. So please click that button, subscribe, and make Josh happy. We don't want him to cry. We don't need that. Upcoming trips, Josh, we will be out in Vegas. I'll be there April 26th through the 28th with him. And then you're leaving probably on the 30th. Is that right?
Yep, whatever that Tuesday is. So I think that is the 30th.
Yeah, we're going to be staying at Venetian Palazzo. So that'll be a lot of fun. I know we already have a lot of listeners that are going to be joining us that weekend.
That's what I was going to say. We've got a ton of people that are going to be down there already. I think we've heard from Eric and James, or at least
Jack.
Eric and Sean and Jack, and I think Joyce might be there. All sorts of people going to be there. So come join the fun. You don't even have to play with us. Just be in Vegas. It's always a good time to be there end of April. Good weather.
Yeah. Now, Josh, do we have to change up the way we play because Jack's going to be joining us again? I mean, Jack only permits boring craps. So does that mean we have to completely change our methods for that weekend?
We should do one session where we play the way Jack wants us to and see what happens.
I'll tell you what, if you want to do that one session, I'll let you do it that way and I'll do it the normal way. And we'll see what happens at the very end. I mean, the FOMO that would come from playing that way versus the way we normal play. If we had a good roll, boy, that would be upsetting.
Yeah, I would. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yes, Jack could persuade us to do something. I don't know what. Maybe video poker for 8 hours or something.
Friendly reminder to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcasting app and to visit our merch store. That's crapvegas.com/shop. As a special thank you to our listeners, now that we've hit our 50th episode, we're still offering 50% off all our remaining CV shirts in stock. We do have very limited supplies of certain sizes and shirts, so make sure you get your order in. The code BIG50 should still work. If it doesn't, let me know. That means I screwed up. But we'd love to have you buy some of those shirts because we got a couple new design ideas we want to get out there, but I need to clear up some space in my basement before we do. Josh, we did get a 5-star iTunes review I wanted to share, or Apple Podcast review, I guess, nowadays. It was from RVN_GB, obviously, Rivengaba. It was a great, the title was Great Podcast and Great Chemistry. The review says, Chris and Josh do a phenomenal job. Their chemistry is as good as Mark and Dr. Mike. Very entertaining and published weekly. Hoping to meet them once in Vegas. Couple corrections here. We're not published weekly. We're bi-weekly, although I really do appreciate the sentiment. And it does feel weekly nowadays with all the CVP stuff. And Josh, the chemistry is good as Dr. Mike and Mark. No, I wouldn't agree with that because I've only known Josh for about 3-4 years at this point.
3, maybe. Are we up
and
to
I think
4 or whatever?
I don't know. I feel like Mark and Mike have a lot longer history together. I like Josh, but it could fall apart tomorrow. We don't know. I feel like their relationship is unshakable. Because it bothers you. I feel like every time I say it, you're like, what is going on? Is he looking for a new host and not telling me what is happening here? So I'm just going to keep pushing that fear into the corner there.
Sure. There you go. To keep us on the top of our game.
That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're worried you're going to lose your job, you're going to perform better to make sure you don't lose your job. See, it's psychological.
It is. Thanks, Ribbon Goob.
Really good. Yep.
I disagree though, Chris. We are published weekly. You just have to be a patron to get the weekly.
That is true, Josh. I didn't even think about it from that perspective. Yes, you absolutely can listen to us once a week if you want to.
It was the first thing I thought, Chris. You got to get your mind in the.
Okay, fair enough. I was just trying to be accurate and honest. That reminds me, Josh, before we close out of here, I hear we have a couple corrections this week.
It's funny you brought that up. We do have 2 corrections.
You know how I am about corrections. I love corrections.
That's right. I told Chris that we had a couple corrections. I didn't tell him what they were, so he doesn't know what they're going to be.
Love it.
One is an error that I made. So when we were talking on the last show, I think it was on the last episode, about the Palms, I made a mistake that I thought it had been Boyd that sold to the San Manuel tribe. It actually was a station's property.
Oh,
that had.
Okay, I didn't hear you say that, but that doesn't surprise me.
Doesn't surprise you that you weren't listening to me? Is that your point?
Exactly. Yes.
Now,
I guess I got to pay more attention.
That's right. Now, the mistake that you made, pointed out by...
We'll edit this out. Go ahead.
Pointed out by Mark, I believe it could be Mike, was the...
7 for 6 instead of 726.
Yes.
Yes, I know that. So the 6 and 8, they pay 7 to 6. What I always shorten it in my mind because I'm thinking if you bet $6, it will pay 7. So you'll get $7 for the $6 that you bet. I understand that's not the right way to say it, and that can be confusing. I apologize. At least in my mind, I can do the math properly, but speaking, that can be much more difficult. Just as a future note, don't send any more corrections. I don't need them. We're good. We can move on past that stuff. It's happened twice now. We don't need any more of it. Let's just assume we're always correct, and if we're not, keep it to yourself.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Josh, anything else you want to talk about this week that's not correction related?
Yes. So, Chris, we talked last week about Bolero, and
we did.
Since then, you've even heard a little bit of Bolero.
It somehow made its way onto the episode.
It just magically happened. So, if you had to guess, how do you think I know about Bolero? Knowing what you know of me about it from our long history as brothers.
The only thing I can say is that your father was a musician. So I'm thinking maybe it's something along the lines, but if I remember correctly, he was a jazz musician.
You're right.
That's more of a classical piece. So those two things really wouldn't go together. Are you going to tell me now that you have an undergrad degree in classical music that I don't know about?
No, but that's where I thought your mind might go. Is maybe Josh is in band or some high school. I mean,
you look
orchestra.
Like a band nerd, Star Trek nerd, band nerd. I could see it all together. Yeah,
they kind of seem to go, but no. So you wouldn't know it necessarily by looking at me or listening to me, but I was in a frat in college.
So was I.
And this is a long time ago. And when initiations were a little different than perhaps they are now. And on the last night of initiation, I feel safe in telling this story because we're so far removed from it. We had to sleep as pledges in, it was an empty room, but we had to sleep in someone else's room. They were trying to mess with our brains or whatever it was. And so you slept in somebody else's room and they slept in somebody else's room and so on. And all night, Bolero played. And
psychological warfare there.
Yes, the way that piece of music, you'd go to sleep during the soft part, and then it builds to that crescendo, and it would wake you up. And then it would just be on repeat, and it would be the
Yeah.
soft part, and you go to sleep, and then it would wake you up. That was the last night of initiation. The story was that music was used to cover the building of the altar or whatever the set was for the final initiation ceremony. That whole thing. I think it was just psychological warfare, as you said. It was just to mess with the.
Oh, it absolutely sounds like it. But I'm glad that's the way that you learned that song and not one of the others.
But anyway, yeah. So Bolero for the last whatever it's been now, 30 years, that's how I know Bolero.
Okay, Josh, if you don't have anything else you want to talk about, I don't have anything else. So let's just thank everybody for listening, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Thanks for your support, everybody. Bye-bye.
Vegas, here we come.
Thanks for listening to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Have you ever been to Vegas?
Check out all our recent news and our Vegas trip calendar by visiting crapvegas.com.
See you in Vegas.
Yes, the CVPVP. The
CD
CVPV.
player versus player? What is this? Are we going to have a Warcraft division
I
soon?
even tried to get that one right. Yes, the CVPVB. No, C. One more.
Try again. Take 3.
Maybe left. So I think that. Hold on, I lost track. So I think. If I can say it.
This is your sentence. Go.
Computer, how many entries are there for Darmok?
47.